It's Monday, August 28th, 2023. I'm Rim.
I'm Scott.
And this is Geek Nights. Tonight we're talking about blocking on things like platforms and social media. So this weekend, because of a combination of wildfires, getting a sinus infection, having to travel for other stuff, Emily and I had not actually been to Sandy Hook Beach at any point, even though we usually go like 2 or 3 times a year.
Well, I went one time last Monday by myself.
Yep, Monday with your special Mondays.
Not my fault.
Oh yeah,
Negotiate harder.
I'm working on that. But so we went to Sandy Hook, had a great time. It was a perfect beach day. The water was at its absolute peak temperature for the year, which is always around this time.
I was there was very nice.
Yep. And of course, it was the last weekend because next weekend is Labor Day weekend. And even though with climate change, the beach is still pretty warm and the water is still nice, well into toward the end of September and even into October around New York.
But the problem is that, in places where it's always warm, there are people who are just professional lifeguards, professional beach employees, professional resort employees, right? They're just do that all year.
Those kids got to go back to school, so the beach is closed.
In New York, in northern places that have seasons, that's a seasonal job, right? And schools start Labor Day, and a lot of those people are younger, college people, high school people even sometimes, right? Because that's, a seasonal summer job. That's the kind of person that would, or even if it's an adult, it'll be a teacher, right? Who's going to work only in the summer? Someone who works not the summer.
Right.
Who is that? Someone in academia. And as soon as summer's over, they have to go back to their more lucrative job. And no matter, even if it remains 90 degrees, it's like, we have nobody up here to work because it's not a full-time year-round job here.
Right.
And I think even if, the summer extends to September, October, it's like we still can't quite make it a full-time job because it's like in February, nobody's going to, right? It's like the person's not going to work, right?
It's not worth it to deal with like a couple more months.
Yeah, you can't have it be a full-time year-round job unless it's really tropical every single month, or at least 11 out of 12 months or something like that.
Yep.
So we're in this situation where we need pools and beaches open because it's still warm for, everybody.
Yep.
But we got nobody to work there, so we had to close them, and it's still hot out.
Yep, because, climate change is going to radically disturb every aspect of human society in ways that people are not even thinking about. Like this tiny thing is going to get worse and worse and worse. 10 years from now, it's probably going to be like 90 degrees in November and none of the pools are going to be open in New York City and people are going to die.
Mm-hmm.
So at least hanging out at the beach, perfect beach day. A few observations. So Sandy Hook has been getting more and more popular, as we know, like more and more people hang out at that beach. That ferry is like really bumping. And when we used to go to Sandy Hook, the only food options, unless you biked like all the way over to Highlands, like over that bridge, where there's a bunch of good seafood, were basically 3 food trucks of varying levels of sadness. Now, not only are there more food trucks, but there are 2 full-on normal restaurants on Sandy Hook. That is a new development.
Oh, there's a second. I only saw the one that was there last year, which is the
Yeah, I already forget the names. There's the one
near the lighthouse.
Yeah, the one near the lighthouse, kind of small. There's another one right next to the ferry dock.
Oh,
and
okay, I didn't see it.
It's huge. And we thought, like, we ate dinner somewhere else because we wanted the good seafood over at Highland. Like, we biked over there. But we went to check this place out. There were easily, like, 100+ people in the main dining area of this.
Well, you were there on a weekend. Yeah.
Yep. But it was rocking. It was completely full. There was, like, a line out the door of people trying to get in.
Maybe it wasn't open on a weekday.
Yeah. I imagine it's only open on weekends. I didn't see any hours or anything. But also, some minor updates. More of those houses are available for rentals for people.
I saw one that had a sign that said for rent with some kind of URL I didn't look at.
Yep, I went to that URL and I saw there's a bunch you can rent, and there's also some on Airbnb. Also, the campsite that used to, best I can tell, was always for group camping, and you had to organize like in advance, and it wasn't like a straightforward process. Now just has a bunch of individual tent camping sites you can just reserve on a website, just like a hotel, for a nominal fee. And they even have a process, which was the thing that always kept me away from trying to rent one of the places on this island. In the past, if you wanted to go there with your friends and you wanted to use that ferry, the ferry is very strict. You can only book 1 day round trip tickets, or like you'll get tackled like that crazy lady that one time. So now there's a thing on the Sea Streak website. If you are staying on the island or on the peninsula for multiple days because you're camping and you use the express ferry, you can call them and arrange a special multi-day trip where you can come on 1 day and leave on another day and not get tackled by the park service.
All right.
So we're thinking about camping on Sandy Hook in October and checking it out and seeing what that's like. You can always come. You gotta get your own tent. I only have one tent.
I have a tent, but it seems cold.
Cold? You kidding? And in October, it's still gonna be perfectly comfortable to camp. And in fact, camping in a tent is nicer in like late September, October, because you got the nice warm sleeping bag. It's not that comfortable usually to camp in a place like that in the dead of summer when it doesn't get under like 75 at night. Anyway, Sandy Hook Adventures. Lots of tech news. Not a tech news roundup. Saving that for the future. But I'm sure you've seen. We don't need to...
If you go long enough, and you can refill your quota, you could do 2 tech news roundups in a row.
I could. The listener is always asking for the tech news roundup, but I still say we should.
10,000 podcasts and websites that are nothing but tech news roundup.
Yeah, and I get the impression either they're all bad.
Shouldn't we do something different? If you want tech news roundup, why don't you just go to one of the people who do it every single day? Right? There's
1,000 Spider-Mans all over the place, but why are we talking a lot about Spider-Verse? That's the good one.
I'm just saying.
So in some news, and this is a technology news because this is an area where technology was employed and had problems and needs to be employed better, and it fits into a common theme of Geek Nights. One aspect of the extreme wildfires and the devastation in Hawaii and Maui during the wildfires not too long ago was that there are warning sirens on the island.
We talked about this already.
Yes. The warning sirens were not used.
Yes, because they thought people would hear them and run up away from the water.
Yep, specifically. So the technology problem that is now in the news and being talked about is how do you inform people in a place like Maui about different kinds of disasters?
Right, we've been relying on our text message alerts, but guess what? That shit was down.
Yep.
Right.
Put a tweet out. Well, Twitter doesn't even work anymore, let alone people don't have internet.
Right, the cell towers were on fire, right?
Yep.
It's like, yeah, the radio, you could have a radio tower that, but people don't turn on radios.
Nor do most people even have radios anymore.
Or broadcast television.
The only radio in our apartment, I was thinking about this, the only one, it is gone because the last radio we had was the same alarm clock radio that I had since middle school that could theoretically get AM and FM if I wanted it to. And we got rid of that thing.
All right, well, I mean, I have radios.
Yep, I don't have any because what would I ever use one for?
I mean, I have an emergency radio and I also have a little Sony radio.
But this gets into an even bigger problem because even if, like, how do we solve this problem? Does the government need to start giving people emergency radios coupled with instructions on when and how to use them?
No. I think by law, they should, put AM, FM radios in all smartphones. Otherwise, you can't sell them in the U.S. Tough shit.
That would actually require some more expensive chips, and I don't think people would use them anyway.
There have been cell phones in the past. In Japan, flip phones could pick up broadcast television, right?
Yes, my old cell phone could do that. Guess what? It required physical headphones plugged into it to act as the antenna. You can't have an antenna. You need a bigger antenna or that doesn't work. Right. All those phones required wired headphones plugged in. Guess what iPhones don't have?
A point I'm pretty
And it can't be through an adapter because you need a direct connection for that type of antenna.
I think there'd be a way to accomplish this.
I don't know.
Impossible to me.
Yeah, put the headphone jack back on or give people an antenna that has to be plugged into their device.
I think that, this is a solvable problem.
But also, even if you did that, one, most people are not going to have an up-to-date cell phone. Like, most people either don't have a smartphone or have an old one.
Yeah.
And
eventually,
two,
it'll,
even if you do this, I don't think people would even think or know to activate that feature or even be aware that it existed.
That's okay, because you can have the emergency broadcast system broadcast a signal, and that signal would then automatically activate the radio in the phone. You wouldn't have to like go and
That is more infeasible because they're not always listening. And making them always listen would drain the batteries.
I'm just saying.
I'm saying there are significant technical challenges to
Broadcasting
that.
drains the batteries. Receiving.
So you should look up the difference between AM and FM and why you can have unpowered radios of certain kinds, but not unpowered radios of other kinds.
Well, we're not using the spectrum for, people aren't listening to actual radio anymore, so we use the unpowered kind.
Except we haven't shut all that existing stuff down yet.
Shut that shit off. We ain't using it.
Yep. I guess the technology problem here is pretty interesting because in New York City, the way like all commercial buildings work is there's one kind of sound that means fire GTFO. And there's another.
A lot of modern buildings that the alarm systems will actually say words.
Well, that's what I was about to say. They still require
or as carbon monoxide. Or
yes, that's type 2. The second type is a different tone that, as far as I can tell, by law is a different tone, and that tone means listen for further instructions. And those are the only two tones, because if you have more than two tones, what average human of average intelligence and average knowledge will know the difference between 3 or 4 or 5 different tones, especially when different states are going to do it differently. So New York has got 2 tones. One of them is fire, get the fuck out. And the other one is listen for instructions. Don't do anything. Listen for instructions. We'll tell you what to do with words. And I feel like that type of system of there are no more than 2 different kinds of signals, and one of them should be if you hear this signal, do the specific thing that we have been teaching you your entire lives to do. Like in Hawaii, the thing you are told if that siren goes off is head up mountain. Just get that there's a tsunami coming, head up mountain. So the second tone should be activate whatever emergency device the government gave you, or turn on your cell phone and hit the emergency button or whatever. Like, wait for instructions.
I also feel like, these low population areas with specific disaster concerns.
You could do what Costa Rica does and what a lot of countries do, and this is super effective. A truck with a megaphone and people on bikes with megaphones just fan out from the emergency center telling people what to do actively.
We definitely do not employ that method enough in the United States anywhere. It's like in Japan, you see them doing it for like political campaigning, right? It's like,
remember the Great Northeast Power Outage?
I'm not saying we should use it for political campaigning or advertising, but it's like that method is not used enough here. It is effective and good in high population areas.
Yep. Case in point, if there's a riot because some live streamer caused a problem in Manhattan, a bunch of people immediately show up to handle the situation. You'd think disaster response would be a similar high-value thing for society, but Capital is angered by this idea. Anyway, you got any news?
We do have a news. So, there's been a lot of hoo-ha, right, around, Dolby Vision, Dolby Atmos, Dolby everything lately.
I don't even have them all straight in my head. Like, I gotta look it up every time.
I watched some YouTube videos, so now I know. But basically, Dolby, they make these technologies, which are good/bad, that allow basically creators of mostly movies, but also television shows and other television productions to sort of, distribute and master their audio and video in a certain way using Dolby technologies in order to try to guarantee, to the extent feasible, right, that when you watch, because they're mastering some movie, doing color grading on like a monitor, a special studio monitor, right? That's like a reference thing that costs $40,000, right?
Yeah.
So there's no way that you, with your $800 TV from Costco, are going to be seeing the same color that they see, right?
Yep.
So they want to try to guarantee that you see the color they see as much as you could, right? Or, you don't have the sound system that they have in their recording studio, but they want to make sure that you hear as much, as close to the fancy movie theater as you possibly can with what you have in your home.
You want to know how movie theaters and stadiums actually set that up? they'll send tones of different frequencies out all the speakers, and they put sensors and people all over the facility, and they use that to auto-tune.
The ones that care can set it up. But the problem thing is the vast majority of theaters and home theaters especially, but also real theaters, do not go through the effort of setting everything up properly. And
but also, imagine the average person who has a TV and some stuff, and then you tell them, yes, get this extra $100 device and put it in the middle of your living room, and then hit a button, and it's going to screech for an hour. Let it do its thing.
There are, those audiophile nerdy types.
There are
also those other types who aren't believing in audiophile nonsense, but they just really want their home theater to be perfect. So they'll pay someone to come calibrate their TV, and they'll pay someone to calibrate their stereo, whatever. Anyway. So Dolby has a thing called Atmos. You probably heard of it. And what Atmos is it's basically just even more surround sound. Right? Like, see, if we're used to 5.1, set whatever, right? It's like Atmos will go the even further, not just rear, front, center channels, right? But actually sounds going up and, over your head, right? And things, bouncing sounds off the ceiling and shit like that, to make it sound like things are coming from anywhere.
Is that 14.1?
I have no. It's there's no set number for it because it depends what your equipment is. But generally, you're gonna have like some rear speakers with some like upward firing drivers, right? And shit like that. And like your center channel would be like some sound bar with like who knows how many tiny drivers in it.
See, the true audiophile will want a 3D printed, fully anatomically correct set of human heads arranged in their TV so that any character's dialogue is recreated with actual biological vocal cords in real time.
That'd be good. So the thing with Dolby Atmos is that, it works, but you have to get Dolby Atmos equipment and set it up specifically and position the speakers, right? And a lot of people have different rooms, right? For example, the room I have is not ideal because it's not huge. So the couch is up against the wall. You can't really put speakers behind you, right? So you can't, the rear channels aren't very rear, are they? Or, things of that nature. And, you get a lot of people, not too many people have like wireless systems, right? That's, there's also various companies, for example, Samsung, I forget what they call it. They have like a special Samsung only thing where you won't actually turn off the speakers in your television. It'll incorporate them into whatever sound system you already have.
Ooh.
All right. Shit like that. So Dolby actually announced a thing today. It's called Dolby Atmos Flex Connect, right? So hypothetically, the way this would work is that, just like Rim said, with the professional calibration, they put microphones and sensors all around and play sounds out of all the speakers, and then, right? It basically sort of does that in your home. So your TV would play sounds out of all its speakers, however many the fuck you've got with your sound bars and your wireless rear speakers, or who knows what you got. And then you would have microphones in the Flex Connect television, right? And then that would figure out what to do. And there you go. Now you've got a Dolby you're going to get as much Atmos as you can get with what you got.
Yeah.
So this is actually strange because usually this Dolby shit is all about making money for TV manufacturers and for Dolby, right? Because it's like, number one, if you want to have a TV with Dolby shit in it, you have to pay a licensing fee to Dolby. So, for example, some TV manufacturers, just have HDR something, which is like open, right? An open license protocol, whatever. And they don't have Dolby Vision because they would have to pay Dolby to have Dolby Vision certification on their TVs.
Yep.
And it's like, all right, is the HDR10 whatever just as good? Probably, right? It's like, but the thing is, some people will only buy a TV if it has Dolby Vision because they really want to make sure that if they get some Blu-ray that was Dolby Vision, that the colors are exactly right, even though they probably couldn't tell if it was the HDR.
Yep.
I
mean, that's why, even doing like color, like design work, I have some Dell Ultra Sharps and they're pretty good on color, but they're not like pro good, and it's fine. But they're definitely better than like random LG.
Right. So there's two levels of making money. You pay the manufacturer pays Dolby for a license, and then the manufacturer hopes to get increased sales because they can slap a Dolby logo on their product. The Dolby Flex Connect, seems to satisfy both those things, but also maybe not, because yes, the Dolby would make money from the licensing, and the manufacturer of a television would make money from selling their Flex Connect television.
Yep.
But they might actually lose money on selling sound systems, because hypothetically with Flex Connect, you could just connect whatever the fuck speakers you've got. Not some Dolby Vision, or Dolby Atmos certified soundbar system, which is probably what people would buy anyway, but like you could theoretically make a TV that just has Bluetooth in it, and you connect as many Bluetooth speakers as you can find, and you throw them all over your room, and you don't care where they are or what direction they're facing or what kind they are. Mix all the brands together, like as many as you can pair without Bluetooth failing. And this will play sounds out of all of them and do as much Dolby Atmos as it can do with the speakers that you've provided that were, the cheap Bluetooth speakers you bought off of discounts.
One itch that idea scratches is something that every nerd was obsessed with back before computers, had the idea of things like more than one core or more than one processor. Everybody wanted to make a Beowulf cluster of something.
Yep. So this could also theoretically obviate the need for like that Samsung thing I talked about, where it uses where it incorporates the TV speaker, because a Flex Connect TV would obviously just play sound out of its speaker as part of and always incorporate it, right? It would just, every speaker it can find and make noise out of will be incorporated into the Atmos. So, I think maybe this is like a good sign. Like, hey, if you need a new TV, wait for Flex Connect to actually come out and get a Flex Connect TV. And then, that'll be good because forward in time, whatever speakers you happen to own or whatever, will always kind of work, right?
Now, my conundrum is, one, I'm looking at buying a TV now, and I may wait because of this, because the current TV has not died yet. It's having some troubles, but it has not died yet. But I am vacillating on the audio side between a kind of a different problem or a different question. Do I want long-term hyper accurate audio to what the media intended? Or do I want to go the opposite direction, like I used to do, like listening to music in high school, and just fuck it all up and mix it to my own personal enjoyment, regardless of what the creators intended? For example, maybe I just start boosting the mid-range vocals and put compressors in my chains to compress everything down to make it more convenient to listen to and watch movies in my actual real life.
Yeah, but I mean, it depends, right? Because certain, different movies are we're gonna need that, and some aren't, right? And also, it's not so much about the sound, right? The equalization or whatever you're gonna do in that department, but just the positioning.
Yeah,
right? It's like, do you want to hear a Star Destroyer actually fly over your head, or are you okay with just not? Right? Because you're home and you're not at the movie theater. Who cares? Oh, and it
reminds me, a total side thing. I saw an article, and I got to find it again because I want to see how much more there is. It's an argument from a doctor that the current debate of movies are mixed wrong and no one can hear the audio anymore has a complication.
People have damaged their hearing.
But the era we are in, since when this complaint started to arise, it happens to line up with a bunch of industry trends. But the complaints are broad, even in places where Hollywood has not penetrated in the same way. So this doctor's argument was that what's actually happening, this is the first generation that got old and lost their fucking hearing like everyone has for all of time and was online enough to complain about it. That "and" is what this doctor's arguing. And anyway, I think it's time for Things of the Day. So I'm back on my neutrino kick and quark kick, and I'm increasingly watching ever increasingly mathematical videos about quantum physics and quantum theory. But the video I want to link to is just fantastic. It's not long. It's like 15 minutes long. And what it does is it explains as simply as possible to the best of our current knowledge, like 2023, what's the best we know about what the hell quantum theory means and what it is. And it's just really well done. It has this great diagram that kind of shows that everything we think of as a particle is basically just like a field. And each one of these fields is like one dimension of a wave in space. And we're pretty sure that's what reality is. It's a really good video. It's not 3 blue, 1 brown, where it's going to feel like you understand, and then it shows an equation that you can't parse, and then it's all downhill from there. It never gets to the point of showing you an equation that you will not understand.
Okay, so you ever go to a restaurant? Usually it's going to be like a Chinese restaurant, East Asian restaurant, but not always. And there is, food that is not edible. It's plastic food that is on display to show you what the meal looks like. But it is made of plastic, right? But it looks like, like that's what the food looks like, right? Or pretty close to it, other than maybe like a hint of shininess that lets you know it's plastic and not edible.
Yeah.
I've seen those around quite a bit in my life. And the question is, where do those come from? Is there just like, did someone make the food and then like cast it in wax? Is there a catalog of like fake food you can buy? And right? And the answer is, there's people like this guy in this video who have been making fake plastic food for like 50 years. He's like a craftsman, an artisan, and he makes fake food. And in this video, he makes fake food, and he just comes right out of the gate. He makes a lettuce like out of nothing. It's like, what? It's like a wizard of making fake food. If only making real food was so easy. Well, I mean, It's not easy. The guy's, a highly talented, skilled, legend of the craft, but,
Yep, this is just fascinating, this video.
Right. It's like he just makes it with like this. He's got some sort of chemical, some sort of plastic thing where you put it in water and it starts to solidify, but he can sort of, mix it up and reshape it and mix the colors a bit before that happens. I wonder what that material is, but pretty, even if I had the material, I couldn't work with it like this guy, right? He gets it perfect immediately, right? He can make any kind of food, make, ice creams or whatever.
This feels like the kind of thing where this person has one or more apprentices and people learn it by learning from someone who is good at it and not from an institution.
Mm-hmm.
In the meta moment, the GeekNights Book Club book, The Murderbot Diaries. I have read 1.4 of the Murderbot Diaries, and I expect to have read a lot of them by the time we get back from PAX, because I have 2 6-hour flights.
I've read like 4 Murderbot Diaries, 4, maybe 5. I'm not sure.
I feel like around the 1st or 2nd week of October.
I only have 2 left, and I'm gonna get them from the library soon. So.
Which implies we're probably going to have read all the Murderbot Diaries by the time we do the
There's
book
one
club.
that's coming out in November. We haven't read all of them. There's one
all the Murderbot Diaries that exist as of August 28th, 2023. We will likely have read.
Since they're so easy to read and so fast, we could just wait till the one comes out in November, right? Read it and then do the episode in November.
We could do that. Target November.
And since it's so many books, that gives people time. Because I think one of them is not a short one. I think one of them is like an actual novel.
Well, our friend Luke in the forum was complaining that starting with the 5th book, they get really long.
That must be the 5th one that I'm about to read.
Yeah.
So let's just go to November, and then we can have all of them read, including the brand new one, and we'll have a relevant book club episode.
Yeah. So start reading the Murderbot Diaries. So far, I have enjoyed them. There's a lot going on. They're not the best books I've ever read, and they're not exactly going to be mind-blowing if you are well-versed in science fiction. But
spoiler, it's one of those books where it's not entirely about what happens. It's mostly about what happens, and it does have something to say, but it's mostly what happens, right? But it's fun, and the characters are likable, and that's why I
really like Murder. I just imagine Murderbot as being this in its own mind, this gremlin-like entity whose sole goal is to fuck around, not have to do work, watch TV, play video games, and the world keeps intruding, and it's just like, I guess, but it actually does kind of care a little, but it's shy. Anyway, I've read 1.4 of these books. We'll see if if Murderbot has increasing troubles as time goes on. Also,
yes, it does.
we will not be doing a show on Thursday because we will be flying to Seattle for PAX West 2023. We're doing an all-new panel, Games You Can't Play, on Sunday at 3:30 p.m. in the Blue Morpho Theater. Otherwise...
And, the GeekNights website is actually, you're not going to believe this, it is like nearing completion. Not completion, but like the point at which it does everything the current website does, and it's better than the current website. Therefore, we can launch it and then continue to work on it, which will be easier to do than working on the old website because it's actually using modern technologies and not ancient versions of everything.
I think the most important indicator that this is coming along, and we're at the point where I have to actually start doing my short task list of things that only I can do or that I committed to doing.
Right. So what we're going to do is we're going to pick a day, maybe in a couple weeks, and we're going to launch it on some server you can't get to, listener, right? And then we're going to hack away at it until it's correct, and then we'll move the DNS entry, and then it'll be live. Right? And so...
means I got to do my full elevated Adobe marker test to make sure that Adobe didn't break anything with that release that I asked for.
I mean, if the markers don't work, they don't work. Right? I can work on that later. That's not a necessary feature.
I got to do the test.
Yeah. The also, once it goes live, I'm gonna make there is the Git repository open source. So if you want to then once it's live, you can then help work on the website if you so desire. There's a list of things that are not done that could be done. Like, for example, it doesn't currently automatically post a new episode to Discord, right? That's a feature that's pretty easy to add. Might take a couple hours of work, but I haven't done it. So you could do that. So I don't have to.
Yeah.
If you want.
And remember,
request, and I may or may not reject it.
Not all help we need or would ask for or would be happy to receive is programming. For example, a while ago, we crowdsourced our terms of service and community guidelines, and there is stuff like that you could help us with on the website as well. So don't think that if you're not a programmer, you can't help. Not that the programming is hard for this kind of thing, but there's a lot of text and categorization and helping us with labels and things that you could actually for real help with.
Yeah, we're going to start also, another feature that's planned is to help clear out the 404s and dead links on newses, things of the day, etc.
Oh, man. I just randomly the other day, I found an old episode of Geek Nights and I saw the name of the thing of the day and I was like, what the fuck is that? And of course it goes nowhere, it's dead. And...
No, it's dead. You could listen to the episode and find out. Right?
I could. And we'll see.
That's what the listener would do is they would go and...
Yep. Anyway, let's get into the main bit. So, this was partly predicated by a news, which we'll talk about as part of this, but also
Let's talk about that news first, I think.
Yep, but this is a broader topic. So, Twitter, which was kind of one of the more important social networks in history for a lot of reasons, well, notable. And again, this is I'm not saying this is good, I'm saying this is what happened situation. Twitter, of course, has shat the bed and somehow has continued to shit the bed in increasing ways. But this latest one isn't just annoying, it is dangerous to a degree to the people still using Twitter. Twitter is removing the ability to block other users. Just full stop. Now, we don't need to address why they're doing it, which comes down to the right-wing people on Twitter who are angry at being blocked, which is one of the main things driving Twitter. Also, advertisers and influencers who are obsessed with having their opinions or posts be seen. A lot of bad people don't want you to be able to block people, and blocking is a fundamental safety feature of any interactive platform in the world, full stop.
So they are keeping muting, right? So let's talk about how it's implemented specifically on Twitter, right? And I'm not saying it's entirely right to get rid of blocking, but it's not entirely wrong either, because
Now, I do disagree with what you're about to say pretty strongly, because you didn't use Twitter the way most people use it.
That's fine. But blocking on Twitter, right, doesn't actually, never, even when it was there, did not actually block anyone, right? If your account was unprotected, meaning that your default tweets were completely public, right? If you had a protected account, blocking is meaningless because no one can interact with you unless you allow them, right? So that doesn't account. So if you had an unprotected account, someone who was blocked, right, they would not, if they tried, they couldn't follow you, right? And if they, if you tweeted, they wouldn't see your tweets.
They
right?
also
If
couldn't search for you. They could basically, as long as they were logged in, they could not see. It was like you didn't exist anymore.
But they could log out and then see you. So there's no point. There's absolutely
no. There's tons of point, and a lot of marginalized communities will disagree with you.
There is no reason to hide something that is public from someone, right? It's like, there's some Nazi, right? And it's like, if they're harassing me, right? It's like, okay, if I want to prevent them from seeing my tweets, but my tweets are still public and they can log out and see them, why prevent them from seeing them when they're logged in?
Well, because Scott,
right?
as most people who were harassed, especially minorities and targeted groups, the main reason they used this is because, yes, it's not perfect, but it introduced significant friction to harassers, in that someone who wants to harass it's not as like an impulsive person, a Nazi who just sees someone they don't like and wants to harass them and spout slurs at them or whatever. You block them. Now they don't see you anymore. They probably don't think about you much anymore. They don't see your content. You don't pop into their feeds, especially because these communities were sharing block lists.
Right. But if they wanted to harass you, all right, it's like, sure, they can't tweet at you, but they could write a tweet that's like, the letter A, the letter T, space RIM. Like, hey, my followers, everyone tweet AT space RYM. He's a person.
So yes, that is true, but it still introduced.
Actually protect you.
It did to a meaningful degree. That friction really cut down on the amount of harassment a lot of people face.
What is implemented actual blocking, right? Which is, like, there's no way, right?
I do disagree, because that's infeasible, and the blocking feature was extremely effective for marginalized groups. You're really underestimating how powerful the blocking as it was, especially before...
The muting that they still have, right, effectively accomplishes the same...
Nope, it absolutely does not. Not even close. Because one, the biggest part of
any tweet that person makes, you won't see.
No, because almost no one blocked people to not see the harassment coming at them. The main reason targeted groups used the blocking feature was also to make sure that their tweets generally didn't penetrate as far into those bad spaces, because these groups were sharing block lists. And if someone's a harasser, usually everyone who follows them was also on the same block list. And that introduced a huge amount of very real and material friction to that community of shitheads, even noticing that their targets were still active. It materially reduced the harassment that they received, not because they didn't see the messages, but because you couldn't even just retweet. If you want to retweet to direct hate at someone, you had to log out, make a burner account. You had to do all these extra steps that only
you could just tweet on your account and just don't put the @ symbol in front of the person's name, and then tell all your followers, hey, everyone,
Yes, you could. Most of those followers are usually also on the same block list because of the shared block list until...
have a mute list, and now you don't see any of the harassment.
No, but the followers still see it, and the harassers can still organize around doxing you, pointing people at you so they come to your website and other things. The blocking being two-way was very effective.
Even if they can't see your tweets, they
could, but they didn't. Go talk to
from anything.
Scott, go talk to any of the communities who use these features. They will tell you they were very effective. So I do not agree even remotely that muting and blocking are comparable in any way in terms of how people actually use Twitter.
Yeah, I think the whole point, right, the fundamental issue here is that this argument we're having, right, highlights the core problem, not just Twitter, right, but basically the whole internet, the battle that we've been fighting on the internet, one of the core battles of the internet since its inception, or maybe even pre-internet, right, which is that you are a person as a consumer of information, right? everyone in the whole world wears both hats, right? But as the consumer of information, you only want to see what you want to see, and you don't want to see anything that you don't want to see.
Yep.
Right? It's like, here's the things that I want to see. I want to see tech news. I want to listen to Geek Nights. I want to know how the Mets are doing. And I don't want to know anything else that I didn't ask for. I don't want it. Right? Harassers, I don't want to see anything harassers are saying.
Yep.
Elon Musk, don't want to see anything he's saying. Advertisements from companies, I don't want to see that. Right? And then the other hat, right? Which is, I am a producer of information, right? Or art, or whatever, right? A journalist, anyone. I have created information. I wrote something, right? I just had an idea randomly. I farted. I wanted to share my fart.
Now,
right?
ethically, that person wants people to see.
Right.
Unethically, that person may want to force people to see.
Exactly. You share the thing that you want to share with the world. You put it out there, right? And the question is, well, there are people who are going to ask to see the thing that I shared. The listener of Geek Nights, right, is like, they are explicitly subscribing to Geek Nights. They want Geek Nights. So if I put out a Geek Nights, they can see it. But should someone who is not subscribed to Geek Nights, should Geek Nights ever show up on their screen? Right?
Yep. Now,
should it even be possible for that to happen? Right? And it's like, well, if it's not, then how would anyone ever find Geek Nights? If the only things that they would have to know about it already.
Now that zooms out to an even bigger problem of discoverability of why is finding Geek Nights Geek Nights is the example, we're not making an argument about us here. The listener already found us. But Geek Nights, why would Geek Nights be so desperate to get people to see it? Mostly because capitalism. Most people who are making content and making things and having ideas and aggressively promoting on the internet are themselves hustling because they need people to see that or they will starve.
Right. There are some people who are doing it for the money, some for the fame, some for both. Right.
Yep.
Right. And it's like people just want to be seen. Right. And it's like, if you're blocking ads, but then you're like also trying to get someone to see, even if it's not an ad for a product or something you'll make money from, but like you just really want your tweet to be seen by a lot of people. You told a funny joke and you want a lot of people to laugh, people who aren't following you, right? It's like, well, then you're still pushing information on people who didn't ask for it, which... Right.
Like, I think most billboards should be banned. Like, I think non-consensual information sharing should be strictly regulated.
The ideal system is one in which you don't have blocking because everything is blocked. Absolutely everything by default is equivalently blocked. You only see what you ask to see. So if you tweet into the wind, or whatever you do, activity pub into the wind, right? And a bunch of harassers see it, and they, pass it all around. All the Nazis pass Scott's tweet around that says Nazis suck, right? And they're all sharing it amongst each other and hating on me. I won't see that. I won't even know it happened, right?
Which can be dangerous. And there are instances of this where
people... It's no different than like you're a journalist. You write an article in the newspaper. You have no idea who reads it or who's discussing it got it pinned up on the wall at the Klan house. You don't know.
Yep.
It's like, it's no different than that. It's like you put information in the world and you do not know who is reading it, what anyone's doing with it at all, right? You just tossed it out there and you don't know how many clicks it got. You don't know how many views it got. You don't know how famous you are. You don't know how much money you made or you don't know nothing. You're just putting it out.
And I think there are two, I think the blocking to prevent someone else from interacting with your information is a separate but adjacent conversation to blocking to not see someone's content because they are both...
The same word is used for both things, but they are completely different things.
And to round back onto the Twitter thing, our disagreement just now, Twitter achieved both with a moderate amount of success, but some significant limitations. And Twitter also was a very widely used platform. So now we're in a situation where both sides of that equation just got gutted on what was one of the biggest social networks in the world.
No, the only one side was gutted, which is you try to make it harder for people to see your stuff. You only see what you want to see stuff is still the same.
Well, so according to this article, mutes seem to not interface correct. Like, you will still see things you didn't subscribe to.
that is a separate problem because
Ah.
Twitter, right, and all these newer social networks.
Also, there's a limit on how many accounts you can mute.
Well, that's also a problem.
My block list before Twitter shut down the API had more than 400,000 accounts on it.
Yeah, that's a problem for sure, right? It should be infinity. In fact, right? But anyway, the all of these things have their sort of algorithmic feeds, YouTube's recommendations, Twitter's, all those sort of feeds, all that shit, right? That is not just the reverse chronological order list of things you follow. Is fundamentally you are seeing things that someone else wants you to see and not something you asked for. And that is the core problem. Anything like that should just get the fuck out of here.
YouTube. Look at YouTube. Go to youtube.com. It shows you that.
Such a thing. Because Twitter has such a thing, that is why mute fails, right? If they didn't have that, mute would be perfect.
Or if that were a secondary experience, if the default experience was here's what you subscribe to, and like Twitter used to be, and YouTube used to be
some other feed of other things that I'm not following, I at least have to click on it, which means I have asked to see the things that I don't follow. It should never be the default screen because then I am seeing things I do not follow without asking for it. Right? You can have all those things as long as they're a click away or a command away or somewhere else other than a place you cannot avoid looking, like the default homepage that can't be changed. They're perfectly fine to exist, but it should never be unavoidable. It should always be, I asked to see this.
But Scott, what you propose, this angers Capital. Because remember, and I know we talk about this a lot, but you really, really have to understand that this is like the fundamental crisis of the entire internet. The whole fucking thing is propped up on advertising. Even if we ignore the fact that most of American society is propped up on advertising, the internet is like more propped up on advertising. Fucking webs. If there were no ads tomorrow, the internet would go back to what it was like before it was commercialized. There's a few hundred websites, and wealthy white people have made all of them with whatever they wanted. GeekNights would keep going, but there wouldn't be any other podcasts.
I mean, it's like if you put up some e-commerce, right, on an internet where people only saw what they asked to see, the only way anyone would find your e-commerce is if they already knew you somehow. Right? They found your business in the real world or something, or, it's like how, right? It's like,
well, I mean, look, how do you and I, as a case study, want to find out about things we wouldn't otherwise know about? One, I read a bunch, I go to specific websites that aggregate and curate news in areas I care about. That's pull. I'm choosing. I read The Verge because I want to know about some of the kinds of things The Verge has. It's not perfect. I would like a more curated feed, but it's not that bad. I used to follow a bunch of people on Twitter, partly because they were the people who would tell me about things I wouldn't have thought to look for, and I trust their opinion. But again, I want to hear what Mike Toole has to say, because he'll tell me about an anime I would have otherwise not found out about.
Right.
I listen to Scott as word of mouth.
Already follow for explicitly, right? Some other source of information you do know. And there is some path through that to the thing that you don't follow.
And for products, you know what I do? I don't look for products to buy unless I've decided I need to buy something to solve X problem. And then I do research.
Yeah, but the research is using a search engine, and the search engine is, yes, you're in some sense asking, but in the other sense, the SEO is determining what you see and what you don't see.
Let's see. I'm going to type something to YouTube right now because I'm extra annoyed about this. Let's see. I'm going to type, I don't know, Minotaur. I just picked a random word. So
Wikipedia page for Minotaur.
So what does YouTube return?
D&D monster page for Minotaur.
So YouTube returns a random curated set of videos that include the word Minotaur in the title. And then after 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 results, now it says people also watched in the tiniest font. And if you scroll by, it looks like it's more search results, but it's not. It's showing me what other people who watched some of the videos from the search themselves watched, not things that matched that search. And then it shows me a bunch of shorts, and the more I scroll down, it's just a chum bucket of garbage until eventually I hit For You. And you know what that's showing me? Literally a bunch of videos I've already watched. Fantastic. Thank you, Google, for being a terrible search.
So yeah, there's the war is, again, you only want to see what you want to see. People want, you also, as a producer, want people to see your shit even if they didn't ask for it, and then vice versa. You don't want to see shit people try to push on you, and all right. And
so on YouTube, why can't I block an account? If I see an account and a video is recommended to me, and
no, that's not the question. The question is, why did not every single account start blocked?
Yep.
Everything should be blocked by default, and instead you should be turning things on, right? Not turning things off, and by default you see the world, right? Twitter originally, the original Twitter was effectively an IRC chat room, right? Effectively, or you could only put short messages, but an IRC chat room. But everyone was, you go in the chat room and you see all the names, but everyone is muted by default. You don't see any chats.
And you pick the set of people you want to see, and everyone picks a different set.
People, right? And then you see only the things they're saying, and everyone else is shut the fuck up. Right?
That was the only good thing Twitter ever did. The first thing.
Right. That was the original Twitter, and that is the model. That's the correct model. The whole internet should be like that. You only see what you want to see, right? When you go to Google, you like start Googling, and it should be like, you don't see anything. And then you pick domains that you want to search, right? Like, I only want to, right now you can do it with like the cite command, right? Like, imagine if you use Google and you only had certain domains that you trusted and liked and knew weren't bullshit, and only search those domains, and every other domain you never saw results from.
Yep.
It's like you shouldn't be having to block, because block should be the default in terms of what you see. Now, in terms of what you send out into the world, right? Me and Rim have a difference of opinion, but I believe, right? If you're choosing to send something to a private group or individual, that's private messaging. That's already right. But if you are sending something out into the world publicly, you have to just accept the fact that you have made that information public, and it is trying to prevent some people in the world from seeing it, but having most of the world see it.
Well, that's the thing. It doesn't actually prevent people from seeing it. It introduces friction within that platform, and that's the value. That if there is a widely used platform, then introducing friction to bad actors who would try to engage with you is a very powerful tool.
Be there in the first place.
Yes, right? But they're there, and the tool was effective.
Secondly, if the bad actors can't message you, then because the other
it's not just that they can't message you. I'll give you an example. There was the series of studies showing that individual entities on a platform like Twitter or YouTube will always randomly be selected to be extremely popular. If you make a fake Twitter with a bunch of pseudo ML mechanisms that all randomly retweet things, over time, certain random messages and random accounts just become the most widely followed and widely used. Like that happens as a consequence of the ability to be able to share and reshare content, just in general. So
just don't do that.
But
if everyone's blocked by default, will that happen?
But if everyone's blocked by default, then I can still subscribe to anyone and retweet to my people, reshare to my people.
I think it's, talking about retweet is, I think it's a design failure. It shouldn't be so simple to retweet, right?
But at the same time, that was the feature I used on Twitter the most and liked the most.
That's a separate topic. But the point is,
but I'm saying if you have a platform, the friction of making it, if I block you on a platform, then it introduces friction of you not just interacting with me, but also resharing and like interacting with my content within that platform. Meaning, if you are a bad actor who wants to take the extra step to harass beyond the block, now you have to do things outside of what the platform directly supports, which introduces the ability to have you to easily block or ban you or bring legal consequences to you or prove intent.
They could just log out, see your tweet, copy it, paste
Yes,
it.
they can.
Push
That's
delete,
a far cry for most people to go through that much effort. That's why that feature was so effective.
And I think that it's not. I don't think that the block is the right answer. I think the right answer is there shouldn't be such a low friction to retweet in the first place. It should everyone who wants to retweet should have to explicitly. When you're putting things out into the world, right, that the whole world is going to see.
I want everyone who follows me to see everything I say if they want, which includes retweets.
Right. If they want, that's fine, right? But the point is that if you are going to publish or republish something, right, on any platform, that is, and knowing that the whole world will see it, a public thing, right? That should never be. That's a bad design to have that be a low friction action. It should, because you're doing something serious, right? You're publishing, right? Publishing should always be a big action, like post. And therefore, it shouldn't be so simple with like one click to completely take a huge thing or someone else's post and completely repost it. You should have to copy it, paste it, look at it.
See, where I disagree there is that society has shown that low friction is what people want, and that is what built a lot of very positive spaces and positive communities as well.
It can go both ways.
It can go both ways.
A
but
fast road gets you where you're going faster, and it also kills people, right?
But that's why I'm saying
I think we would all be better off in general, though, with a slow road, right? You get where you're going still, and less people die, even though we don't have the fast trips, right?
But that's where I'm saying, in a world where the reality is almost all people want the ability to rapidly reshare, and that's not going to go away.
Do they want or do they not want, right? It's like, it's one of those things where it's like, when people have the thing,
I think they wanted partly because Twitter and platforms this was not a primary feature, and retweets didn't even work that well, and they rapidly became the most used thing without being pushed.
They were very used, but that was, first of all, the people designing the system designed it to make people use that on purpose, right? And so it's like when it's there, right? It's like, yes, people ate it. It's like, yes, when
let's zoom in then. Let's zoom in then. Any group of people, take any group of nerds, put them in a room with a computer, and 9 times out of 10, they all have 5 YouTube videos they each want to show to everyone else there. And there's the big fight about who puts on which video. Like, every nerd group always has this exact same dynamic.
Yes, people have a desire to share things. That is without a doubt, right?
Yeah.
Even I have that desire, right? What are we doing? Things of the day on here for no reason, right? Come on. Everyone has things. When they see a cool thing, you want to tell your friends about the cool
I'm just saying, I don't think
right?
the friction is a problem. I think that there's other societal problems that make the lack of friction on resharing a problem.
I think we would be better off if the resharing action, right? If you're, everyone has sees cool things all the time that they want to share with everyone, right? If everyone just shared everything, then it's like, it's just it's too much, it's too noisy, and a lot of low quality stuff gets through. If we added a little friction to that process on all platforms, right? To where it's like, oh, you want to share that cool YouTube video with everyone? It's,
So I have an alternative.
Then that would raise the bar a little bit, raise the quality a little bit.
I have an alternative but complementary argument that the only reason the bar is so low and what you call qualitatively low quality content is so widely spread.
Qualitatively,
and
yes,
I am also similarly, I have the same quality judgment as you. Like, don't think that I'm
okay. I'm just saying.
I'm noting that there's someone out there who earnestly likes that bottom tier content. Like, there's
and it wouldn't be, but that person is going to be following people, right, who are more like them, and with the higher bar are going to see more of that stuff we think is bottom tier that they love.
Oh no, I'm stepping bigger
a little bit.
I'm saying the only reason almost any of that low tier content exists in the first place is because of the extreme pressures of capitalism at all.
Could be. Depends on which content exactly
because
you're talking
almost
about,
all of it. There are exceptions. One exception I can think of is fascist indoctrination. That is not directly profit motive. That is evil motive.
It's true, yes. Without the profit motive, a lot of people out there who are making content, of a lot of variety, the people who say like and subscribe would not be making it, right?
Yeah.
Unlike the GeekNights that makes it even if there's one listener, doesn't put ads, right?
Yep. I'm saying on a given week, instead of 400,000 Minecraft videos that have high production value and let's just say qualitatively low quality content, there would be an order of magnitude fewer. And if you look at the old internet, before anyone even realized the internet could be commercialized, every website was just kind of great and just had the content you wanted. When ads appeared...
That is the thing, is I think that without the ability to make people see your thing and to chase view counts or anything, I think that is a motivator for a lot of people to post and create in the first place.
Yep.
And
I think the primary
motivator.
motivator.
Yeah, if that for it is the primary motivator for that kind of person.
Yep.
Right? Which
but
is
I
a lot,
think
right?
that is only the primary motivator for so many people because it's capitalism. Like everyone's got their hustle.
The capitalism is a part of it, but there are some people who just want to be famous regardless of the money. But
they're more easily ignored.
If we took that away, a lot of people would simply stop creating, stop sharing. The only people who would create and share were the people who are doing it like we are because for other reasons.
Yep.
Right? And I think that would be a better internet, but it would be a quieter internet, but it would be a safer internet, I think.
It absolutely would. And we have to solve this real quick as a society and culture because large language models are going to generate a literal infinite sea of garbage
yes.
content that
why...
you will never be able to find anything good again in that sea. It's going to be like the quark foam that I just learned about from one of those Arvin Ash videos.
All right. So we agree that, blocking what's coming in, right? You should only see what you want to see. And we disagree what's going out. I think if you're willing to send something out that there should be a little bit of friction ideally, because it's not a small action that you're taking. It's a serious action. You should think about it for at least a second. And also that you have to accept the fact that you're putting it out into the whole world. Nazis are going to see it, even though if we at least get the first part right, you won't ever hear the Nazis coming back to you.
Here's an idea.
You say...
Here's an idea there, a specific one. Let's say we solve the depredations of capitalism problem. So now it's more like Nazis versus literally everyone else in terms of posting. Which wouldn't be that far off from that when we get to that point. But so say we're in that environment. Then arguably, blocking features within platforms for the publishing, if the barrier to resharing is low, and the barrier to resharing being low would likely... plausibly be a benefit to society because we've removed all this low-tier content that was being generated by capitalism, then, now already I realize I have so many caveats that this is such a narrow point, then the blocking features are a very specific ratchet-style tool. They, in aggregate, decrease the friction of people interacting with my content by default, but increase the friction of people I don't want to interact with my content. But it's not necessarily blocking more. It's almost like limiting. It's not muting either. It basically means everyone can reshare my content, but specific motherfuckers who have crossed me in some way have more friction to do the same. And in a large long-term system, that would lead to, over time, what I see as bad, or what society sees as bad actors being more limited. But to your point, that isn't really blocking as it is used today by most people.
If we get the first part right, where you only see what you want to see, then it's like, no matter how much Nazis reshare amongst themselves my anti-Nazi screed, I'll never hear from them. You'll never hear from them. We'll never know that that's going on, and they will be cut off from society because no one will see their Nazi conversation other than themselves.
Yep.
They'll be in their own little bubble, right? Which
so
they are anyway.
So did we just have another episode of Geek Nights where the moral of how to solve a problem is we have to destroy capitalism?
I mean, we already know that. But the point is, we disagree on the block what you post part. We agree on the block what you're reading part. And I'm, working on building exactly something, right? Without basically being an activity pub server that follows the philosophy that I've just espoused, right? Where when you post something, it's out to the world, deal with it. But the only things you ever see are the things you asked to see and nothing else, the end.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll see if that actually works or not.
And in the interim, if you're using Twitter and these block features go away...
Twitter is done.
Yeah, but if you're still using it, be ready for the fact that if blocking goes away, because that platform is designed the way it is, it could become specifically more dangerous to you, especially if you are a group like typically
Well, I
targeted.
think because the information I didn't know of the mute being limited, right? You could basically run into a situation where, you muted all the bad people and then there's more mad people and you can't mute them. And now the bad people can tweet at you and you're going to see it. You're going to see something you didn't ask to see. And now it's unsafe.
So funnily enough, before I got rid of my Twitter
it's
account,
unusable.
you know what terms I had muted? Patreon. That's it. That's the only term I had muted.
Okay. I guess I've got everything muted now.
The final mute.